So we said in order to do our job that we had to do 2 steps, and we're going to start getting involved in Grasshopper now. So we said the first step was to select something from the DWG file as exposed by Rhino and get it into here. And the way we start in any sort of, as a beginner, you have a few options at your disposal on how to learn Grasshopper and learn the syntax of how to use Grasshopper. Nothing's going to teach you how to do what we just did on paper, other than practice makes perfect. Even I can't teach you how to do that. There is no right or wrong answer when it comes to that. There are different degrees of right. But if you get it to work, you get it to work. When everybody's getting started off, one of the things that you can start by doing is learning a lot from people who have already done things before. So there's already a wealth of knowledge on there. And if we say the right query here, we'll get the answer. You're not the first person who's needed to get the mouth into Grasshopper. But if I type get the mouth into Grasshopper, I don't think anybody's expecting right now that I'm going to get an answer here. We all effectively know that in order to use Google search, for instance, you have to Google it in a certain way. And this is the Google search for Grasshopper, for instance. So we need to be clever, and we need to use the right language, the computer's kind of language. So again, by having empathy for the machine, not only will we be better off making algorithms for many reasons, but one of them is because we can actually search for what we want to do, okay? So in this case, what do we want to do? Get what? The mouth into Grasshopper? I'll leave it blank for now. Get blank into Grasshopper. Well, what did we just establish we have? When we looked at this, we had said that when we look at details, that these things can be described as geometry, valid curve, arc, all those things. So let's speak the language that we're trying to speak here. And in this case, I'll say geometry. Get geometry into Grasshopper. Yeah? Reference geometry into Grasshopper. First things that come up. And in this case, if you know anything about Grasshopper, they're describing, you know that this is the right answer. So again, this isn't a huge lesson I'm not trying to sit here and teach you every single component up here in Grasshopper. I think there's plenty of resources out there right now on how to do that. What's more important is to understand how to find the answers. To teach all of these, there's new ones coming out every day. So to try and teach Grasshopper itself is not the right thing to do. Of course, teaching a few simple skills is. So you already know that you want geometry, and that everything up here, hopefully you've been exposed, you can come up here and you can grab different little tools, and you know that's effectively how Grasshopper always looks, yeah? Well, one of the key things that you can learn right off the bat is the user functionality of Grasshopper. Two ways to find things. One is up here, and another one is by double-clicking the canvas. So what I've done is I've just double-clicked out here on the white space, and let's say I want to follow the instructions online, which are telling me to get a geometry. I don't know if this guy's actually right. He looks like he's doing it for groups. So potentially not perfect for us, this one. But there is the ability for us to find the answer there. In this case, I'll just tell you what we want is something called geometry. And this is really the first time that we see this little black emoji, this black hexagon emoji. It's very important, and you'll find those up here in the params category under geometry and primitive. And these guys right here, remember, when you see a black emoji, all you're seeing is something that contains a type of information. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't create that information. It doesn't delete that information. It doesn't update any information. It just contains that information. It's just a bucket of data. I always call it bucket. So in this case, actually, there's a few of them that are relevant for us because we just saw geometry. We also know we have the mouth itself is a curve or an arc. It did say arc. It didn't say circular arc, but And you see a lot of people sometimes they say, I want to create a line. They'll come out here and they'll say, I want a line. And this guy, he doesn't create a line. He holds a line. So in this case, if I double click again and I say curve, for instance, I put that out there. The way I get this guy over here into Grasshopper is by right clicking, setting one curve, and now he's in Grasshopper. Before, if I just redo what I did before, he was orange. Now he is gray. And this comes down to a simple first lesson in the mechanics of Grasshopper, is how do I know at each stage of the script, let's say, what is going through the veins of this script, what is going through that black line, yes? So in this case, the first thing we can do is we can hover over top of the component, and we see it comes up with the emoji, which can be helpful. Sometimes the emoji is very helpful in Grasshopper. It says some English here, so it says curve, CRV, contains a collection of generic curves. It also says referenced arc line curve. So there's a lot of English here that is automatically telling us a story. But we're talking about geometry. So what's equally as important is that we could see that geometry. And you may have noticed that in Rhino, there's some previewing going on. And this has to deal with Grasshopper's inbuilt previewing system. Remember, these two screens are intertwined. So Grasshopper has two settings up here. One is red mode and one is green mode. And in red mode, you see everything as a preview of what's on the screen in Grasshopper. So if I just hide all of this stuff, what you can see here is that I actually still see the mouth. I hid everything, and I can't select what's out here in space in Rhino, but I still see it. Why? Because I'm in Grasshopper red mode. I'll delete this other one. I was just using him as an example. My script has one component right now, and that component is telling me in English, I contain one referenced arc line curve. Referenced meaning I'm just pointing to the one that's out here in Rhino that you yourself have drawn in Rhino. And the reason I can see it on the screen right now is because by default, this one right now is going to show a red line in red mode. If I wanted to not show that by default, I would click him, right click, and go to preview, and that would make him not show. Even if I click him, he doesn't show up. If I go to green mode, however, and I click him, no matter if he's gray, this shade of gray, it doesn't matter. In green mode, you click something, you get a preview, and you can see I'm doing that right now. So as you go forward, it becomes very important to understand red mode and green mode, especially when you're dealing with geometrical-based things. And even if you're not, Grasshopper is a great medium for taking advantage of this very simple fact that you can make the algorithm that you're working with very visible. And you can visualize geometry very easily. And this is very important because the directions particularly stipulate that effectively under red mode, by the end of all this, we want to see a smiling face. And we don't necessarily want to see any of the sacrificial steps. So it'll become very clear very soon that some of the components that we lay down, we need to be doing this to, where we say, you should be previewed or you should not be. It's very important right off the bat to sort of understand the visuality of the tools that we use, because these tools are meant to be fairly straightforward and visual. So the two things that we've learned here is, one, how to get some of the information you were given in the form of a DWG file over into Grasshopper. Second, we learned how to find components and find help for Grasshopper. So your natural instinct going forward should be to search for something on grasshopper3d.com. And search it in a way that's empathetic with what the computer sees. And the third thing is how to basically find the components in Grasshopper, either by double-clicking the canvas or by sort of coming up here and dropping things down. And the fourth thing was sort of how to inspect what's flowing, let's say, from one thing to another. And that becomes very important because of what I just did kind of randomly there. You see, I went from a curve to a circle. And again, we said these little buckets, they contain circles, yes? So when I put the curve into this bucket, he changed the picture. But it should come as no surprise. This guy lives to contain a circle. So he cannot contain anything other than a circle. I gave him a curve. He did some magic that looks pretty visually simple. Again, going to green mode here. Looks like he just completed a circular curve because he said, hey, listen, that's nice that you gave me part of a circle, but I live to talk about circles. So I'm going to go ahead and complete that for you. And this is, again, something why it's very important for you to understand objects. Because if you cannot be this specific, then the computer might be trying to be clever for you, like it's doing here, and you'll be able to lose your way very, very quickly. So that is just step one of our algorithm for file 1.